Hey, it's Emma Romano here, founder of the Thrive and Life Foundation, self-healing coach, and the midwife to your personal alchemy.
I am Kelly Bowen, founder of the Heaven Within Foundation, CEO of Lifestyle Finance Australia, finance expert, life and business coach.
And you are listening to Inspired Conversations,
where we talk about the things that really matter. Yes, we go there.
We share together what's exciting us, inspiring us, and having the most profound impact on our lives and our clients' lives. And we do this to elevate and inspire you.
We cover it all from life, body, love, relationships, trauma healing, addictions, business, money, and all things woo-woo.
So sit back, relax,
and get ready to be inspired and laugh the fuck out loud.
Welcome, everybody. This is Inspired Conversations. My name's Emma Romano, and here is the delectable and delightful
Kelly Bowen, and you are listening to
Inspired Conversations. All right. Today
kind of better than last episode, but we're getting there. We're working on it.
Getting better. So anyone listening to this and you have got your little eyes and ears open about psychedelics, we're no experts at this, by the way. We're just
personal experience.
We're just experienced at it. We are experienced at this, but we're not experts. So can we just make that very clear?
Yes. And also in no way, shape or form are we encouraging you to go out and take psychedelics, to take any form of any drugs, or saying that it's safe or any of that kind of stuff. What we're talking about today is purely a question that we got asked, and we thought that we would be brave and step into this and speak into this space from our own personal experience, and you as an educated person and an educated listener can choose and just have a little bit more information around, like if you've been sitting on the fence about this yourself, to which pathway is going to be right for you. And the topic that we're taking on today is psychedelics or spiritual practice, or both. So we're going to talk into this a little bit. There is no one way better than the other. Excuse me. Clearly, my voice feels a bit nervous about even speaking into it. So please listen to this with an adult level responsibility. If there's children around, this probably isn't the episode for them to listen to. Drugs are bad, okay? We are not advocating taking drugs.
There is something really pressing on my mind about this. And I really want to get it out there because I have been taking psychedelics for spiritual growth and unconscious programming and to heal deep wounds now for 3 years. And, you know, I've taken mushrooms, I've done ayahuasca, and I've taken, I can't remember what it was called, but it's some poison off the back of a toad and you smoke it, right?
So I think they just call that toad.
It's toad, right? There you go. That's a very masculine way. It's like literally, that actually healed. I was kidnapped in Santorini back when I was 24. And that was kind of some of the first healing that's really, really was deep for me. That healed, that was pretty amazing. But there's something I want to talk about.
Yes.
And this goes back to people dating people who have psychedelics. There are a lot of men, this is very general. There's a lot of men who claim they're spiritual and they've done a lot of personal growth because they've done a lot of ayahuasca, they've done a lot of, you know, mushrooms, they've done a lot of stuff like that.
LSD.
Can I, big exposure from somebody who is a teacher and a facilitator and a therapist of deep psychological issues. You can't just rely on a fucking mushroom, people. You cannot rely on it alone. You have to do you have to reprogram the unconscious mind with therapy as well. I'm not talking about psychology, psychiatry, or counseling. I'm talking about deep therapy that goes in the unconscious mind and uses the energy work as well. So you do need a mixture of it as well, because it's one thing to go after Kumbaya, my Lord land, and see freaking Jesus, and Jesus tell you, yes, you're blessed, you're all good now. You do have to reprogram the old programming that was set in your mind from 0 to 6. So people, if you're on a dating site and you're looking for a spiritual partner, male, female, or them, they, or whoever, and they say, yes, I do all this spiritual work. All I do is I wish her every week and I do this or do that. Ask them, what other work do you do?
Yeah.
It is super important, because I have found a lot, because I'm a relationship expert, a lot of these people will claim they've done this and that and this and that, and they get a God-like
persona.
Yes.
Spiritual bypass.
Yes.
Yep.
They think their shit doesn't stink. They think that they are above everybody else, and it's actually not their spiritual side talking at all. It is their very wounded ego that comes out to play.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. So there's a couple of things that I sort of want to place into the conversation from an understanding of awareness and what's going on in the brain when we do these things, and what, like, the appeal for psychedelic versus consistent spiritual practice. Because, you know, doing the consistent spiritual practice, it takes work and it takes time and takes dedication, whereas you take like LSD, a mushroom, ayahuasca, coyote, toad, whatever, or DMT, like poof, you're off into the quantum and you're somewhere else. And it is some of these spiritual journeys where you gain like mass quantum access, you've got to remember, depending upon what's going on inside of you is going to be what part of the quantum you can access, because it is vast and it is very intentional. So now this is like, so when we're talking about this godlike complex that you're talking about, Em, is like when people receive these high levels of advanced like quantum access, but without the intelligence of really how to navigate that quantum access, and to know the difference between whether in a higher realm reality, a lower realm reality, mid realm, and what information are they channeling, what are they receiving, like it can really kind of warp with a person's sense of identity. Now, here's why. So here's the science behind it. And I wish I could remember what these 3 points of the brain are called. But essentially, this is what happens. When you take the difference between psychedelics and other drugs is that psychedelics actually work on the inside part of your brain, whereas other drugs like amphetamines, cocaine, speed, MDMA, ecstasy, which is ecstasy, it works on the outside part of the brain, the outside neuroreceptors. And the reason why psychedelics have been turned to throughout tribes and eons and the evolution of humanity is because they allow us to dissolve our identity, because of how it affects these 3 particular points in the brain. It's like there's like a triad inside the brain. There's these 3 points that actually fire our, it's like a modal mode of operation, where this is our dominant thoughts, feelings, behaviors, patterns, what we've grown into beyond the age of 7. And we have quite fixed circuitry around how we view and see and operate in the world. Now, for us, if we want to change that, we often have to do deep work and a lot of repetitive work to change some of these ingrained patterns around the identity that we have formed for ourselves, that this modal form of operation holds strong for us. Now, what LSD does, or mushrooms, DMT, any form of psychedelic, is that it actually loosens this. So instead of the neurons only firing around this path in this circuitry, the neurons inside our brain start operating like they were when we were between the ages from 0 to 7. So we're able to easily form new neural pathways to create new behaviors and to see our traumas and experiences differently, have new insights, change how we feel about them, and create this profound sense of healing, because we lose touch with the fixed sense of identity that we've created by ourselves. However, people go into this space thinking, wow, that's cool, I'm going to go heal my trauma and I'm going to take a whole bunch of mushrooms and I'm going to take some LSD, and yet they don't do it with people that are trained properly, that know how to take you on a journey like this. And then all of a sudden you find yourself having this huge like deep depressive thing, and like you're fucked up for ages afterwards, because either if you try and do this by yourself, or you do this unsupervised with not just somebody who's gone and been with a shaman a few times and they've got no real kind of history, now they want to call themselves a spiritual master, and yeah, come on, I'll take you on a ayahuasca journey or a mushroom journey or whatever else. No, like this needs to be with people that have done like practice after practice after practice after practice, that understands what happens when this modal form of operation, like your fixed sense of identity, starts to become dismantled, because you're diving, the trip that you have, you're diving deep into the unconscious mind, and whatever's in there, it's going to surface. And depending upon what you've taken to go into that journey and how much you've taken will depend upon how much you completely lose your sense of self within that. And that comes up, and being that we're in the realm of the unconscious, it's going to come forward in symbols, overwhelming emotions, like random visual projections of like people trying to hurt you or kill you. And because that, like, it changes how you're viewing the world. And depending, again, if you've had a lot, you lose your complete sense of self. Like your whole system is open to rewiring your whole identity. But if you've gone into this unconscious space without the right support, and without being prepared for that, and knowing very consciously and intentionally what it is that you're wanting to achieve, you can come out really messed up. And on the other hand, when you prepare properly, then you can have these profound shifts and profound healing that do radically change your life. And it needs time to integrate. But anybody who's been taking a lot of plant medicines, and then you're like, so how is that integrating in your life? And not really much has changed from when they started. You know that they're not grounding and integrating what they're receiving.
Yeah. And what we mean by grounding is how do you action it? That's how you ground something. How do you action it? And this is the issue where any kind of growth work, whether it's spiritual or psychological or, you know, through plant medicine, people will go and do that half an hour or that 5 hours of ayahuasca, no problems. But what about integrating the change when you get home? How about actioning the new parts of you every day, every action, every moment you can possibly get, that you action that? And I think that's where people go missing. Yeah. So I did ayahuasca, when was it? 2020. And for the one and only time. And it was a 2-day event. So we had it twice, on a Friday and a Saturday night. And my son, Jack, and I went. And it was fantastic and completely traumatic at the same time. Yeah. And the facilitator that we went to was apparently brilliant in his knowledge around ayahuasca, and produces the plant himself. But the way he facilitated was, there was no pre-framing, there was no nurturing, no love, no comfort. There was nothing. And we really didn't know what to expect, Jack and I. And we were just so grateful that we had each other. And I've got to tell you, it took us about 8 months to recover from the trauma of the weekend of having ayahuasca. Mm-hmm. You know, so when people hear about ayahuasca, it is not all fun and games, people. It's really not. And we went in there with intention, because Jack and I do very big, deep spiritual work with dragons. And we you know, facilitate change for big groups. And we've been doing it for a long time. So we went there with the intention of really clearing some deep magic, deep, you know, old crappy stuff that's been sitting there. And you know what? You get what you ask for when you go. And
you do. It's intentional. Whatever your intention is,
oh, you'll get it.
Hey,
I mean, I didn't expect it to be so big, and I just didn't have the support. And I've heard other people who have done ayahuasca, and they've had beautiful groups where they've had beautiful music playing, and they'll have, you know, people helping out, and they'll just, if they see that you're having a bit of a rough time, they'll come out and just go, you know, just come from a place of love, come from heart. If I'd have had somebody just whisper it in my ear, come from a place of love, or you are love, that would have completely changed my whole experience for the better.
Mm-hmm.
So my advice or my suggestion for anybody who is even thinking of doing this, the questions you want to ask are, what's the setup? What is the setup like? You know, what music are you playing? Because the music they played for Children and I, it was techno.
Oh God.
And there was one song or one piece of music, and it was like an E sharp. So it was just going, E, and it went for like 15 minutes, and it drove me insane. Jack had to get up and go outside.
Wow.
And it was, you know, obviously to pull stuff up, but it was just triggering. So you want to ask these little questions, you know, how comfortable it is. If I'm having a bad minute or a bad moment, who supports me? How do you support me?
Mm-hmm.
Does somebody come up and touch my feet, or do you hold my hand? Like, what do you do for me?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm throwing up uncontrollably, how do you help me?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think
if I'm going to shit my pants, or if I shit my pants, because that can happen. This shit happens, literally.
Yes, it really does. It
like,
absolutely
how are you going to support me? How are you going to help clean me up? Like, and it's because the way that it affects the brain, like you're not, like you can see, but it's so different. Like you're not looking through your eyes, you're looking through your eyes, but you're seeing it from a quantum perspective. So you're seeing the sacred geometries behind things, and everything's moving. And it's why you see people like, you know, we see it on movies, people laughing at them on acid trips, and they're like patting a wall because, you know, the wall's moving. So like these are such, like they're basic questions, but if you don't know what you're to expect, you would never think to ask about it. But these are so important. The music will totally determine where you go. And it can either be like that frequency of, you know, having a higher vibe experience, or that like you're spending a lot of time in the depths and the triggering of your unconscious mind. The other thing that I want to put in there, I literally remembered and now I forgot, in regard, so with our plant medicines, right? It is a living, sentient being.
Yes.
Do not go near them unless you literally feel yourself getting a call from them.
Yes, that's so important.
Don't do it because it seems the cool thing to do, and that's how people are activating light language and spiritual gifts and blah, blah, blah. No, I guarantee you, it's like, if it's not calling you and you're not feeling it as a deep desire, and you're like, wow, I can really hear ayahuasca calling me, or I can hear mushrooms calling me, or whatever it is, if you're not feeling it, don't do it, because then you're putting a frequency in your body that hasn't invited you yet. It's like you're in violation of the frequency. There's already a mismatch. Like if you're doing it because you're curious, it's the wrong frequency. So for me, I've done, like recently, I've been on actually 3 journeys. So I'd been feeling that magic mushrooms had been calling me for a while. Like I'd done them before back in my party days, but it wasn't intentional. It was like, oh yeah, let's get high and be in nature. Wrong reason to do it. It was fun, but it wasn't the, like, mushrooms can either be really kind, or any psychedelic can be kind or not kind. It's all intentional anyway. So, and I'd been feeling this call to go on a mushroom plant medicine journey, because I really wanted to activate the next level part of my quantum sight. And I knew like how this works, that it would be able to allow me to see beyond what I'm seeing through this physicality. And I wanted to have a really gentle experience. Didn't want to be doing any deep trauma healing or anything like that, because again, I'd never, like, this whole sense of not being in control was really scary for me. So I had no idea how that was going to amplify. So my intentions were just really pure, and I wanted to sort of like see on the other side and see sort of what's there before I do anything bigger than that. But before I even got to that point where I'd found the right time and situation and reason to do it, was I had been putting mushrooms, like healing mushrooms, in my cacao for nearly 12 months before I did this. So my body had already been starting to entrain to the frequency of mushroom healing and mushroom magic. And I wasn't microdosing, in case were you microdosing? No, I wasn't microdosing. I was literally having like changa, lion's mane, I can't remember the other ones, but there's a bunch of healing mushrooms that are actually incredibly healing for the body. So I'd already been training myself into that frequency, so that there wasn't a contrast between my frequency and the frequency of what it was like than the psilocybin frequency. So it was much more natural. And then like my first, so that was sort of like my first journey, and that was all really nice. And then I was also being called to try LSD for the same reason, and just because it's a little bit stronger. However, each one of these are really different, and it's, again, be conscious of your intentions. I had like these beautiful intentions that I wanted to experience, and on the last intention I had, I want to know what's the last thing that's blocking me from having my heart like fully open and ready to step into my like next relationship. Like what is there anything left there? And I was, mind you, I was going, oh, I've done so much healing, I feel really good. I don't think that, like, I feel pretty clean around it, right? Wow, truth will always punch you in the face.
Drop on the ass, isn't it?
Oh man, did this drop me on the ass? And I realized there was a whole other layer to a level of self-abandonment and self-betrayal that I had to go through, where from my fawning past and different sexual things with men in the past, where I completely self-betrayed and I completely self-abandoned, yet I was still playing a little bit victimy and not wanting to take full responsibility for the fact that I created the false reality where those things happened, and I need to take responsibility for those decisions, and not saying no because I could have, I just didn't. And it would have been respected, I just didn't. And I had to, like, that weight of like, oh, like it was yucky and gritty, and it took me like a couple of months to work through it, to like really get to that next level of it. And then I, like, after that, again, I was still feeling cold to have another mushroom experience. And this is when I was learning more, how I was saying about the modal operation parts of the brain and how it works. So I was like, what is actually going on within my brain than what's going on? Because I love the science behind things. And I did a whole bunch of like looking at different TED Talks about it. There's some awesome stuff on TED. There were some other books that I read that I can't quite remember off the top of my head to sort of understand this on a deeper level. And one thing that I'd noticed about any time that I'd had psilocybin or even like LSD was that it really, whatever I was feeling, it amplified it. So my it was a bit like that movie Limitless, where you see that all of a sudden he's receiving all of that information all at once through all of his senses. That's what it felt like. I could literally feel my internal organs like working, and I could, like, my perception of sound, my perception of vision, everything was just like turned up tenfold. But one thing I noticed with it was that it was more easy for me to access my emotions. So I could feel what sometimes I would find really hard to get into, to sort of like heal and release things from my nervous system, from like past things, and be with my inner child with that. And I remember the last one I did, and after this one, I was like, this is enough for me for a while. I feel complete with this little journey that I'd been experiencing or like processing. But I literally went through, like I went in, and the intention, and I could feel the emotions wanting to pull me back and pull me into them. And I'm like, this wasn't really my intention for this. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to surrender, and I'm going to let myself fall back into these emotions that are wanting to be felt. And it was literally like I was going through different time points on my timeline where I was like, boom, into a memory, like, whoa, the intensity of emotion, and like crying and feeling it. And then, and mind you, like I was still observing myself doing this, and I felt completely safe, completely held, and I was very okay with what I was experiencing. And then it was like I was picked up and I was taken to another time point, and the same thing happened, but it was just happening so rapidly and shifting through my system so rapidly. And then after that, like I was like, okay, cool. I'm just gonna let myself integrate with that, and I'm gonna let myself like just be. That was enough. It was super intense, yet I could feel the profoundness of what I was experiencing, because of it just created this space for me to access things that otherwise my defense mechanisms had shut out. In that modal sense of operation, my coping mechanisms on a normal day-to-day basis just wouldn't let me into. Or if they did, I was kind of like scratching at the surface, whereas this just went right in there. So I guess back to our original question, spiritual practice or psychedelics?
Look, I think there is room for whatever you have a calling for. And
Great answer.
I believe that none of it can be forced. None of it. Not spiritual practice can be forced. I don't believe psychedelics can be forced. I don't believe any of it can be forced. I believe that if you have an inkling or like an excitement around it or a feeling around it, I say explore it.
And do your research.
Do your research and make sure you're doing it with people who are doing it for the right reasons. You know, good questions help you support the best journey.
Yeah.
You know, and you also want to ask for aftercare.
Yes, so important to have aftercare.
Yeah, I mean,
because when you discover shit.
Jack and I didn't have it, and we were emailing this guy saying, "Hey, mate, we're actually fucked up. Like, we're in a really shitty way. What do we do? Oh, it's just normal. You'll be fine." No, well, we're not fine. It's now the second month, and we're still not fine. And we spent a lot of money, you know, healing the effects of the ayahuasca. You know, you've also got to find out if you ever go on ayahuasca, where is your ayahuasca coming from? Because I did
with mushrooms
and mushroom, with all of it.
All of it. You've got to find out.
How's it being grown? Where are people buying it? Where are people finding it? What's the frequency of it? What's their frequency of it? You know, don't forget everything is a everything is a frequency. So you've got to look at that as well. But you've got to understand your own instincts around it. If you want to do it to be cool, don't fucking do it. If you want to do it to keep up with the Joneses, don't do it. And you've got to be careful. You've got to be careful around who you tell too. But I've got to tell you, you will have a massive ego death around it. You have it, you'll drop a lot of wounding. You'll drop a lot of ego. It certainly humbles you because you find out you may not be as fucking crash hot as you think you are.
Yep.
You got to be careful. I mean, I know with Jack on his second night, he went to every single death scene of every past life. And he said it was horrendous. He just couldn't get away from it. He just could not get away from it. And, you know, it was lucky that I was there. I didn't know what was going on with him. But at one stage, I just saw, I went and laid beside him. He was laying down, laid beside him, and I just touched his face. And he said that touch actually brought him back to earth and brought him back to a place of love. And I said to him, what do you think might have happened if I hadn't have touched your face at that stage? He goes, I could have been in a psych ward. So you've got to be really fucking careful.
Yeah, this is not fucking child's play.
It's not an Eki pill on a Saturday night, peeps.
No.
It's really fucking not. It's not an Ecstasy pill on a Saturday night. It's not
a line of cocaine.
It's not your line of cocaine, you know, on the back of the toilet seat. We've been there, right? In a gay club. It's not that, right? It's real. It's nothing. It's not even the realms of it. It is huge work. It's huge stuff. And you've got to be prepared for it. So my advice is this: don't play if you're not ready to do the work. You know, don't play if you're not ready to go and look at the depths of the ugliness of your own soul. Because it's
more your own human.
Oh my God, it's so true, isn't it? Like, wow.
And as for spiritual practice, have one anyway.
Yes.
Have one anyway, because that's the part where you're cultivating that relationship with you and a higher sense of self and greater divine, like whether you call that God, spirituality, Allah, whether it's Hindu, like whatever it is, like have a spiritual practice where where you're cultivating a relationship with the divine, something that's far greater than beyond yourself, because that is the higher consciousness. Like, that is our heart expression. And that is something that we should be spending time cultivating more love every day. And the more like it was actually a friend of mine, Mark, if you're listening, Rigger, I got told that this was actually a line from you about like stripping back what is spirituality. And it's simply, spirituality is really what's left once you take off all the masks in its most simplest, purest form. And we should all be working on doing that every day, because, you know, the only reason that we're experiencing some of the dysfunction within the world is because the dysfunction is within us, that we then go out and project upon the world. And the more that we bring into harmony and unity that within us and come into divine union with all aspects of ourselves, we then go create a world that is of unity, that is of heart consciousness. So regardless of which pathway you choose, we should all be endeavoring to have a spiritual practice. And these are just like little cherries on the top that help sometimes accelerate that. But like, it is not for the faint-hearted. This is not fucking child's play.
And, you know, with a spiritual practice, it will take away that feeling of being alone or no one's got me. When you've got a strong spiritual practice, you never have that feeling. You know someone has always got your back, you know.
If you do, you remember very quickly.
Yeah. What a podcast. This is huge.
Yeah.
Guys, thanks so much for listening today. We love you. Please make sure you check us out on our Facebook page, Inspired Conversations. We would love your comments. We would love to know what you would like us to talk about, what we'd like us to delve into. We love doing this. We love you.
Very much.
We got 1,000 listeners the other day, Kel.
Yeah, we're actually over 1,000 now. I was literally just
over 1,000. Yeah.
I think we're up to 1,083.
1,083. 1083 in the house. All right, my loves. We love you so much. I love you, Kel.
I love you, Em. Love you, souls. Bye.
Bye.